All right, welcome friends to The Yard. I'm your host, Darryl Scotti, coming to you from Big Yard Nation here at Pyramix Studios in Phoenix, Arizona. Today, I am just totally jazzed to be here with you guys. I'm with producers Alex Chacon and Aaron Howard. Gentlemen, thank you both for coming down. I'm so excited. You know, you guys have been a huge part of the 54th Street sessions that we've been doing over the last few months or so. And I'd like to discuss some of your thoughts. And so, again, thank you guys for coming down. Aaron, you know, you've helped produce the background vocals on this project that Alex has produced for us, and some of the songs on the releases. Can you explain your process and how you've kind of gone about? You've got a unique way of doing this, and I think our listeners would really love to hear a little bit about how you've gone about it, and how did you develop that?
Okay, I have loved producing the background vocals. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate you, Darryl. This has been the way I've always done it, and I don't know if it's as unique as, I don't know if it's unique, it's kind of...
To me, it was unique.
Yeah, right. So it's kind of the way people tend to make pop records these days, which is you get a couple people in and you just stack a whole bunch of vocals and on parts that you want, and then for every single part you might have 8 tracks, and it does something. It's a thick sound. And so that's a process that I learned by being a musician myself, making records for bands in the studio, and then sometimes making records for solo artists who wanted super huge arrangements. And in a lot of cases, I was responsible for singing everything. And so I had to figure out a way to do it that made sense. And over the years of just doing a lot of it, I learned how to hear harmonies, and then learned how to show people, hey, this part would work for you, this part would work for you, and go in and sing it 8 times in a row on loop, and I guess I love harmonies. Harmonies are like the heart and soul of a record expanding from one level to another, to me, often.
Well, I'll tell you, it's, like I said, it's been an incredible experience working with you. I know that you produce a full gambit of... Alex, let me ask you a question. So you've been a big part of this project that we've been working on, the 54th Street sessions, and thank you for that. It's been an incredible experience working with you as well. And you've had your hand in just about every part of this. Where have you learned your techniques? Where did they come from? How did you develop them?
Well, firstly, I want to say thank you for having me on here, and then also working with you has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank
you. You brought a lot of different people together in the project, and I never thought I would see Bill Dutcher and Chuck Hall in the same room, which is amazing. So I think that it's really cool what you've done. So answering your question, I mean, for me, producing it was kind of cultivated really early on in my earlier years. I remember my first program was Reason when I was like 12 and 13, and just kind of creating arrangements with, making hip-hop songs, remaking hip-hop songs. I think I redid I'm on a Boat, like I used to do his auto-tune on GarageBand, and just all kinds of different remakes and remaking tunes and stacking instrumentation and just having fun, being creative, which was that's what the fun of producing was. And then, as I, getting older and through more experiences, working at different studios, working with different engineers, working with different artists, it's just all this knowledge has started to build up. And then, you find out what are the processes that what do you like to do? How you kind of gain your own way of doing things, and then if you take from everybody, you take from little snippets from here, even if it's just how did that guy mic that drum, or how did that guy where's he played a guitar note a certain way or whatever, and yeah, that's kind of where my technique and my experience and that's kind of how I got to where I am now. So.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you're very hands-on, and you bring it all to the table, and I love that. From my career, I've worked with a lot of producers, and I've worked with a lot of artists and with their producers, and I've been in the back of that, and I've been in the front of that, and there's nothing that you don't bring to the table. I mentioned one time while I was watching you work, you kind of remind me of Mutt Lange. Not that I've ever had the opportunity of doing a project with Mutt, but I have seen him work, and it's incredible to to watch the way you work, both you guys. What do you guys think are some of the characteristics and techniques that you use in terms of producing your music?
I'll start. So I think that knowing all the elements is so essential to producing music. I mean, taking a step back, what are the drums doing? What is the bass doing? How is that rhythm section working the song together dynamically? And then same thing with all the other instrumentation, guitar and knowing the language of those instruments and having that expansion of knowledge, so you can say, you know what you want to do with that drum. You want that snare to be duller, or you want it to be a higher attack, or knowing the details of those things. How are you going to attain that goal to that sound that you want? And having that technique, having that knowledge, knowing what to say to your engineer, knowing what to do to solve issues and troubleshoot problems that may occur, or that your client or whoever you're helping, artists, get them to where they need to go. And also being able to pivot too, you know what I mean? You also want to be able to pivot and have multiple ways of doing things. So.
I wanted to jump in and say that as I've watched you as a producer work, I also see that hat of engineer that you wear. So you really do bring both those schools into it. Aaron, what are some of the techniques that you use?
Honestly, everything Alex said is spot on as far as I'm concerned. And the point he made about knowing what's going to be there is so huge to me, because I'm always thinking about what role is this instrument going to play. So if somebody goes and plays and strums a guitar the same beat as the drums all the way through the song, and then the drums are playing kind of the same rhythm as the guitar, and then the bass is just riding the kick drums, and that's fine. But I think that there's almost two ways to make a good record. Really, really thoughtfully, and I don't mean cerebrally, but I mean really thinking about, okay, the rhythm is going to be covered by, let's say, this percussion in the drums, and so maybe we want the guitars to be doing something else, or the pads to be doing something different than just being there. And there's some genres, like, say, straight rock and roll, where that's the perfect thing. You got da-na-na-na-na-na-na on the guitars, and the drums are going, that's great. But the most exciting thing about making a record to me is finding a way to do something that enhances the emotion of the song, because so many things in record making are almost narrowing that down compared to a live performance. And so you have a great band that's learned all their parts over years. Often the best way to make that record is put everybody in the studio, isolate them a little bit, and let them play, because you're just going to have magic moments that can't come from anything else. That said, I came up as a 100%er, where I had no money and no access to any professional services, and I was just obsessed with the internet and basically doing what Alex talked about, and just making songs and then building original songs. And I have like sort of a decade and a half of being bad, a little better, a little better, a little better. Hey, people want to hire me. Yeah. Like 10 years, 12 years in was the first time anybody wanted to hire me. But in that process, I learned from like Jeff Lynne making Full Moon Fever with Tom Petty, where they sat in a room and they stacked stuff. And it's still kind of like my preference for making a record is to lay down tracks one at a time, and then somebody wants to go on the guitar part, and I'm like, nope, that crosses over where the vocal starts. We're going to fade that way out, or that guitar part can't be there. And so you need good musicians for feel, and you need thinking. If you don't have a band that knows exactly how they play the song, then you need a lot of kind of what Alex said, a thought process of, okay, maybe we don't need a pad in this section because it's nice if it's super open and empty and we just have the vocal super, super clear and naked. And then, hey, the pre-chorus, the drums drop out, or something happens where it's super patty and the plucky instruments go away, and then the chorus comes in, and it's all to build emotion on something that the recording process tends to flatten down a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's my thought process about recording, and the way that I've done it based on my background, which was, I want to make something that sounds like an expensive record all by myself. I'm going to go into my laptop, and a lot more people are doing that now. It didn't really used to be a viable thing. Like I watched it become viable, because when I started doing this, it was 2006, and digital stuff wasn't good enough, A. B, virtual instruments weren't good enough, and if I needed a drummer or a bass player, I needed a drummer or a bass player to make a good record. And I still like hiring drummers better than using samples. But sometimes samples are right for the record. So it's a very it all came because I was limited in what I could do. And so I did the best that I could, and I tried to learn how to do it in this vacuum alone.
You know, there again, I love that answer. And, you know, as I've gotten to know you, you know, I met both of you guys. I was introduced to you as a producer, and then, you know, learned about your experience in terms of a musician. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I met Alex as a musician, an incredible musician that just blew me away. And I knew that I wanted to get together with him and to see where this would go, and had no idea that we would end up even here today. So let's talk a little bit about musicianship and songwriting. So I know, Alex, that you're trained. You're Berklee School and a grad. You're classically trained. You started off as a violinist and became an incredible artist yourself. Tell me a little bit about the processes that you use in terms of songwriting as opposed to producing. How do you go about creating the song itself?
Alex just pointed at me. I just got to say something about what you said about Alex. I had the same impression. I met Alex. I was at Janie's for some random reason. I was at this venue in Cave Creek for a random reason, and I met Alex. And I see him running around setting up cameras, and I'm like sort of in an amateur way into cameras, and I'm looking at what lens does he have on there. Oh, he's using zoom lenses. I got to ask him why he doesn't use primes. And we had I had this whole thing in my head. And then he gets up and starts playing. And I didn't know Stephanie was your sister, but I knew Stephanie. So he's awesome. Playing with this band, and he's just like, talk about musicianship. Like, he just stands up there with a guitar and plays the best freaking rock rhythm I've ever heard. And then he's playing rock solos, and he's playing on a PRS, which is unusual. Like, it's kind of a little bit of a signature, but I'm just sitting there going, this guy is just like a wonderkind. I've got to know this guy. So I walk up to him and talk to him. And of course, when you walk up to somebody with cameras and ask them about their cameras, the first thing they're going to do is be like, oh, it's one of these. My story what kind of camera is that, bro? Yeah, like, what kind of camera is that, bro? Oh, you know. Okay, apparently, yeah. So, I'm having this thing, like, I gotta go talk to him, and I'm feeling a little bit like a 7th grader, like afraid to talk to a girl, you know? Like, okay. So I finally walked up to Alex at some point and talked to him, and we had a meeting, and we've worked together a couple times with him behind the cameras, and we haven't done music until now, and we haven't really been working together. It's like Alex did all the production on this record, and then I'm kind of jumping in at the last minute to do background vocals,
which you were a little apprehensive about.
I was,
and because I think because of your mutual experience and respect that you have for one another.
But I have a huge amount of respect as far as, you know, I've heard your original songs, and, you know, I think that you have a way about doing vocals that, you know, I just don't, you know, I know my strengths and my weaknesses, and I do think that, you know, it was pretty cool for you to jump on and help with the background vocals and just, you know, have a second opinion on those things, because, you know, it does take, you know, good music takes collaboration, not just with, you know, the musician level, but at the producer level and the songwriting level and all those things. It takes a team of people to create good product. I mean, there's so many instances in music where it just wasn't one person, whether they're writing a very tiny melody or putting a little percussion or whatever. They're like, hey, you know, put that cowbell right there, or whatever it is. It could be one tiny little thing, and that additive made that song, whether, you know, whether people are really paying attention to the additive or not. You know, it's part of that collaboration process.
Because part of the personality of the song. Yeah. Well, I'm huge in collaboration. I never really collaborated on songwriting until this project, which we're going to talk about a little bit later when we bring some of the collaborators in. But I firmly believe in collaboration, and I think one of the reasons that I believe in it is because we all, as artists or songwriters or performers or producers, all wear it on our sleeves. We are a product of everything that we've been experiencing or grew up with or listened to or were a fan of. You mentioned Jeff Lynne, which was amazing. When you and I first met, you talked about Jeff Lynne, a huge fan of his and respect him. But I agree with you, Alex, that collaboration is just such a huge part of it. And I think for artists and musicians and producers not to open themselves up to collaboration really just holds them back. Do you agree with that, Aaron?
I do. Yeah, I think that as soon as I was able to collaborate, as soon as I could afford to collaborate, I did. I've never wanted to be the guy that was like calling up better engineers and being like, collab, bro. I always felt like those guys were asking for free work. And so the first time I made a record where I really collaborated, I paid a bunch of different people thousands of dollars, and it's the best record I ever made, for sure. And so I think it's absolutely true. And the only record that I feel that I've ever done personally that's viable as a genuinely good commercial product, I think, for myself. For others, I am the collaborator, but for myself, was a record that I did where we there were a lot of people involved, and everyone's contributions made this magical potion that became the album. And I never would have made that record. Probably the same for you here. You never would have necessarily made this exact record without exactly who was involved. Yes. Especially since you have co-writers on several of the songs.
Yeah, certainly not with the eclectic blend of songs that we got, like Carefree State of Mind.
Yeah.
Like Melody, which is a complete departure from that. Or Give It Away. Or even Happy Day, where we took and we brought in horn sections and whatnot. You were the guy that when you first heard the basic tracks that Alex and I did, you were the guy that came, after Alex and I programmed the drums, you were the guy that came in and said, live drums, and that's how we ended up.
The first thing I said. Yeah. That's right. I was like, these tracks sound great.
And Alex and I were debating it.
Hiring a drummer.
We were debating it, and I was hot on it. But the drum sounds that you can get today with Superior 3 and whatnot, and we came up with some good beats that we ended up copying even with the live drums. But that's how we ended up in Pyramix Studios here in the dungeon of or the bunkers of Pyramix Studios with doing the live drum tracks.
That's how I do it all the time, by the way. I do live drums by programming what I want and then sending it to a drummer and being like, maybe you do something better, but this was my idea for the song, and that way you end up with something close sometimes. And sometimes they're like, I had this other idea that I think is better, and I'm like, yeah, you're a drummer,
Well, it worked out great, and then of course we brought in Alex's rhythm section, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on too in another episode. So, all right, let's change directions for a moment. Let's talk about songwriting process. Where have you guys? We'll start with Alex. Where have you guys found the most success with that?
So as far as songwriting goes, I find that the most important thing to do is to put it in your sequencer in your DAW. Put whatever idea that you have and put it in your DAW, and then build around that. And then find the foundation, find the foundation where whether you're going to start with this intro, the verse, the chorus, bridge, find your formula for the song, and then refine it later. You can add on to that, add the additives and obviously we're talking about, you're at home by yourself or you're collaborating with other people. We're not in the studio right now. This isn't a studio process. This is producing music. This is the fun, just have fun with it. But I think so many people get tied up with, they'll write an idea and then they're like, they expect it to come to fruition just without putting it in a sequencer or a DAW, or they don't use those tools to organize it. And the DAW and the sequencer and anything, whether you use Logic, Pro Tools, Sonar, or all the millions of other ones that no matter what you're using, putting that into the DAW, just putting it down there, you can see, now here's this part. Now I need to do this, and I need to do this, and I need to build this formula, and then you can refine it as you go. And then when you have all these additives, that could in turn give you inspiration to say, you know what, I'm going to put a bridge here, or I'm going to put, actually, this chorus actually needs to be, double the chorus, double the verse, whatever, and that is what I think a lot of people lack, and that's why they can't, get past that one idea.
Yeah, that's incredible stuff. Before we pass that on to Aaron, I just want to say from old school where I've come through and now into this digital world, if somebody were to ask me that question 20 years ago, I would have answered it completely different. Well, you start with a lyric, or you start with a melody, or you get your guitar and you got a riff, and kind of how I developed the songs on this project. But once I handed them off to you guys, I started seeing this whole digital world in this process, which is fascinating to me. So if you're young and you're watching this, I hope that you gleam on to some of this great information that both Aaron Howard and Alex Chacon are giving you guys, because it's been an incredible eye-opener for an old guy like me who's just having some fun and putting out some music to collaborate with some guys like this. So Aaron, give us a little bit of a take on that same.
Okay, so honestly, Alex has a similar opinion. What's interesting is that songwriting is my whole life. Everything else is secondary. Songwriting is the number one thing. And I was maybe call like a Nashville songwriter, not anymore because everybody in Nashville does it the way he talked about now. But like I was a sit in a room with a guitar and write, and then I had been through every school of it. Start with the title, start with a good melodic hook for the chorus, start with a riff, all of that stuff. And that's sort of the school I came up in. But what I started to realize myself was that sometimes when I was in control of the playing, so when I was controlling the rhythm, whether I'm playing piano or playing guitar, I'm not coming up with the same ideas, specifically rhythmically, that I would be if I had that part recorded. So I have a lot of different processes and I have theories about them. For example, I think I write better lyrics if I write lyrics first, which is a very weird thing to do. But if I'm writing a lyrically dense song that's supposed to tell a very incredible story, then I'm probably going to start with poetry, and I kind of know how to make sure the poetry will work as a song.
Sure.
If I typically start with either the melody or the riff, and the way that works is I'm walking down the street and I'm like, okay, that's going to be a thing. And I start humming that, and then I like run home because I'm almost always walking when I start songs.
It's half written before you get home.
Well, yes. And that's a huge, my process now, I call it songwriting walks. Exercise and songwriting are always accidentally combined. And what I do lately is oftentimes I'll force myself into a corner. Like I'll record something on guitar that's maybe an unusual set of 4 chords, and I'll just repeat them a measure each 6 times, or I'll do a dotted half note and then whatever, and of each chord, and then I'll do it 6 or 7 or 8 times, and I will just hum to it until I love what's coming out. Mm-hmm. And so that's like getting in the DAW. Some of the best songs, in my opinion, that I've ever written have been exactly that. Like I started building a track that was interesting and then sang over it. But for me, this is something that I do 7 days a week, and the output of finished songs is pretty consistent. And the reason for that is that I'm always looking at starting something, and then I have a section of my life that's like, okay, we're going to do finishing here. So I think that's another thing where it's like, you get an idea, and to me, as a songwriter, when you have a verse and a chorus melody, you have something. It's like, okay, we got something. Here it is. Like once we figure out what this is about, and a lot of the time, even though that's kind of magical thinking or whatever, a lot of the time I have a verse and a chorus melody, and I think it wants to be about something. Like this feels like it should be something.
So it's going to take a life of its own.
Oh, well, I'm going to try. I'm going to try to listen for it. I'm going to try when I'm writing lyrics, and I can't tell you how many lyrics I've had that were perfectly functional, great lyrics for a song, and something didn't feel right in here.
Sure.
And I go, I got to keep looking. I got to let this go. And so sometimes a song is magic and it takes an hour or 30 minutes to have all the sections, and sometimes it takes more. But for me, lately, my process is record stuff on guitar just to force myself to write.
Sure.
Put in headphones, walk down the street and sing along, and come back. My rule is I have to come back with a nugget. So I have to come back with a chorus melody or a verse melody or something. And then as I go through the process, the next day I might be going, okay, I got verse and chorus melody. Now let's get a lyric. Okay, now I know how I can fit the bridge in, what the bridge needs to be. So yeah, my whole process is, I think that there's so much math and science and craft that goes into writing songs that are effective, that for me, having studied it so much, the most important thing is to bring instinct back in. You have to understand the craft, but the craft needs to be a tool set that you're not thinking about. And the instinct comes in terms of, okay, I've done this 25,000 times. I'm just going to keep singing until until I like it, until I love it. Not I like it, until I'm like, yes, 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 that's it. And until I want to jump with joy and pump my fist. And so that's the instinct, because I think that what makes a good song bubbles out of here. And what makes a great song, I should say, bubbles out of here. And the craft is what keeps it from falling apart after the instinct has had its say.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total
That's awesome.
sense. And from my standpoint, as a songwriter, like let's say the song "Proof" just started off as a riff, or "Happy Day" started off as a riff, or "State of Mind" was even a riff, and then I kind of developed it with that. And then by the time I brought it to Alex, we were able to start getting it down and build some of the tracks from it. And I used some of this, like for instance, I used the drum track. I used it was a machine that had all these real drum parts put into it.
Oh, Beat Buddy, right? Yeah.
Beat Buddy,
Yeah.
and that's how we kind of came up with that. And then Alex heard that and said, I'm going to take those and I'm going to build them, and we put them into a drum program. So. So all of that stuff that you guys said collectively is kind of how I developed this latest project. But by the time it got to your hands is when it really started taking that life on. So I am a total proponent and a big fan of collaboration. But what do musicians need for collaboration? Let's go to Alex.
I'm going to say being open-minded and being able to compromise. There's just so many ideas out there. You have this riff that you just absolutely love, and if you're in a band or whatever and you're working and you're like, actually I really like this, and then they come to you, actually I really like this idea, and then you're like, I'm not sure about that. Yeah, but that's a really nice idea, let's put it on the refrigerator.
Yeah.
No.
Maybe next time.
No, but compromising and finding solutions that work for everyone in that collaboration. I think that is something that is really important, because at the end of the day, you want to make a product that's good. I mean, collaboration is two forces working together, three forces, five forces, whatever. It's
Sure.
people coming together to create a product.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to make sure that everyone, all parties involved, are happy with the product that is being released, happy with their parts, happy with happy with the piece of artwork that you came together with everyone to create. And compromise is just the biggest part of all of that.
Let's go to Aaron. Aaron, tell me a little bit about what you think musicians need in terms of collaboration. I love what Alex had to say.
I agree with everything Alex said. I think being open to the process is really important. The thing that I would add is that I think everybody who's involved needs to agree on what the goal is. So if the goal of a song is to accomplish a certain thing, then we're trying to serve the song. We're all trying to serve the song, and this song needs to move people emotionally. We want to make people cry, or we want to make people dance, or we want to make people go, yeah. I mean, whatever you're trying to do, I think if you come into the understanding what's the priority here. Is the priority for people to listen to the words? Okay, then the lead vocal is going to go up 3 dB, and that cool guitar line has to fade before it starts. So that's the kind of thing, collaboration-wise, that matters to me, is making sure that everybody's on the same page as you go forward. And I think that you need to be a little bit outside of yourself and outside of what your contribution is, and think of your contribution as a contribution. Like, this is what matters here, and this goal that we've all agreed on is what matters here. And if just this one little thing can add to it, or if it's better without me, hands off. And so I think that openness to everybody's ideas and openness to accidents that make everything better is insanely important. And I think also all having the same goal, knowing what that goal is, and then being sort of outside of your own self enough to say, hey, we don't really need guitar in this section if you're the guitar player. or, you know.
I mean, to riff off of that a little bit,
Yeah.
I mean, there's something so interesting about when you're collaborating with somebody and, you know, you might not like their idea right off the bat. And then, you know, you're like, okay, you walk away from the session and you come back the next day or when you guys start to work together or you know, you step away, give your ears a rest. And then you come back and you're like, oh my gosh, like that
It's actually
is awesome. Like, and then you're like, oh, like, you know what? At first, I despise that idea. I did not like it at all.
I didn't love it.
I didn't love it. Let's put it on the fridge. I'm just kidding. but then, you know, you take it, you give your ears a rest, come back, and then you find out, you know what, that was really the embellishment that they made or in whatever scenario, the change or that wasn't to your liking.
It kind of percolated.
It did.
Which before we wrap up, I want to, our producer Bill Waters had mentioned how AI is starting to come into these young songwriters that are embracing technology and they're you know, they're sampling stuff. And today you can make a record and make it sound like Drake or cop Ed Sheeran and you know, and that's becoming a big problem because what made me think about it is, like I said, our producer Bill Waters had said, you know, I think it should be OI. I think it should be organic intelligence. And that's exactly where you guys grasp that. And I think that that's really important for all you young people that are out there and you're looking and you're trying to figure out, how do I want to go about writing songs and getting records out? And do I need a producer? Do I need a record company? Do I need all of that? Well, yeah, you do to an extent. But what you need to do is you need to sit down and start getting some of these ideas together and then start collaborating with other musicians and producers. And the good Lord's going to take you in exactly the direction that you need. That's all the time that we have for today. Again, I want to thank you guys for joining us in the yard. We've had the pleasure of chatting with producers Alex Chacon and Aaron Howard. Big, huge props from me and a heartfelt thank you. So from all of us at the Big Yard Nation, we hope whenever you're out there getting to wherever it is that you want to get to, that all your dreams come true. Visit us at bigyardnation.com and join us in the yard. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Big Yard Nation. And don't forget, like and subscribe to us right here on YouTube. Until next time, this is Darryl Scotti. May God bless you and keep you safe. Peace out from the nation.